This is a poem by Wilfred Owen. In this poem, we can see that Wilfred Owen uses ample figurative and rhetorical devices to demonstrate the horrible effect of war. 1914 was written by Wilfred Owen as a letter to his mother about Germans' shelling of Scarborough. Ideas like anger and despair of war contained in the letter. Just by looking at the title of the poem, 1914, we can kind of foreshadow that the poem is going to be about war. Because in 1914, world's most memorable event happened, which was World War I. For this commentary, I'd like to focus on the theme of the poem, which is the brutality of war. First, I'll discuss how the author uses a specific structure which in such a way that lends complexity and sophistication to the framework of the poem. Second, I'll discuss how Owen uses diction to add depth to the poem. And third, lastly, I'll discuss how Owen utilizes ample figurative devices to add color to his poem. In the beginning of the poem, Wilfred Owen uses specific structures. So we can see that Wilfred Owen. So 1914 is a 14-lined poem, which tells us that it's a sonnet. It's not, and 1914 is not just any sonnet, but it is an Italian sonnet. Sonnet usually talks about love and like peaceful images, but however, this is kind of ironic because 1914 talks about wars, which kind of contrasts the usual form of sonnets. Volta between stanzas signifies shift, as we can see from line 1 to 8. Octet, which is called octet, is concerned tone about the incoming horror, and from line 9 to 14, from line 9 to 12, it talks about the reflective tone about the past. However, in line 13 to 14, Wilfred Owen goes back to the present, which talks about the war. So, throughout the poem, there's end stops such as line 2, 7, 8, 12, 14, which gives focus to ideas. And as we read line 5, 6, 7, there's casuras, which is a stop in the middle of the sentence. This emphasizes something or conveys suddenness. And in line, we can also see the use of enjambment in line 1, 5, 6, and 13, which continues ideas to add detail. So as the poem progresses, Owen also utilizes a lot of different diction to add color to his poem. So in line 1, winter kind of connotes feel like death and harshness, and in line 2, perishing connotes like to go from something lively to dead, like death. Like the world is perishing. The world was lively, but then it turned dead. And then in line 3, the full tornado centered at Berlin. So we can see that it's evil, and the tornadoes bring destruction to the world, and the center of the calmest point of the tornado, which kind of tells us that Berlin is what is causing the war. Like, outside of Berlin, everything's going to disaster. So Berlin, the Germans are causing we can see that the Germans are causing the destructiveness. And another diction that Wilfred Owen uses is world in number line 4. This kind of tells us that the war is uncontrollable and it's going crazy. Yeah. Last of all, Wilfred Owen uses ample figurative devices to add depth to the poem. So the many figurative devices Wilfred Owen uses is extended metaphor, personification, and juxtaposition. So throughout the poem, Owen utilizes 2 extended metaphor, which is so one of the extended metaphor is the winter of the world, and full tornado centered at and rending in line 1, 3, and 5. It is comparing war to winter and a bad storm, which can be seen as extended metaphor. And another extended metaphor Owen uses is human autumn, spring had bloomed, summer, autumn softly fell in line 8, 9, 10, 11. And these describe the world in cycles like seasons and having to sow and harvest. And personification is also used throughout the poem, as Owen says, verse wails. So poetry is screaming because it's kind of saying the poetry is screaming because it is being killed by war. And another personification is blazed her glory in line 10, which is saying summer was full of life, but not anymore. And juxtaposition is used throughout the poem to better add more depth to the poem. In line 14, new spring and blood for seed. This contrasts positive spring with negative blood. In conclusion, we see how the author utilizes specific structures throughout his poem, and many dictions to add depth to the poem, and many ample figurative devices to add color to the poem. Thank you.